Okay, so we're back with another episode of Life with Albinism, and we have another special guest today, another international guest today. That's what I'm most excited about. From Italy, we have Chi. We want you to tell us your name, introduce your social medias if you would like to, and tell us about yourself and let us know how living with albinism has been for you.
Okay. Well, okay. My name is Chieda Mashonganyiga. I am from Zimbabwe, and I've been living in Italy for 4 years. I am 21 and an undergraduate student at John Cabot University. I'm a double major in communications and marketing. And yeah, so I think definitely like my experiences of growing up with albinism were very much something that I think that a lot of people who are of color and grow up with albinism experience, where you're kind of an other, but you don't notice until one fateful day it just kind of hits you. Mm-hmm. And I think my moment was I used to do a lot of theater, and they wanted us to wear makeup for like one of the plays because the lights were really bright. And I remember I went home and I told my mom, and she was like, okay, this is all my makeup. And then like we had this very intense moment where she realized that she couldn't use any of her makeup on me.
Because none of it matched your skin tone?
Ooh. My mom is not anywhere close to being light skinned. She's definitely like, mid to dark. So we weren't really matching foundation colors, if I could say it like that. And so it was something that I do remember as a kid being one of the first moments I really realized that I had albinism, because I think if your family really normalizes you and accepts you and you don't feel that that barrier or any sort of level of stigma there, you don't realize that there's something going on until you're forced to realize that there's something going on.
So now, what was early childhood like for you growing up with albinism? Because I have no clue how reoccurring it is to see someone with albinism in Italy.
She didn't grow up in Italy.
Yeah.
Oh wait, you grew up in Zimbabwe.
She grew up in Zimbabwe.
In Africa.
So then let's break the two. Tell us, what was it like growing up in Zimbabwe with it, and then what is it like in Italy, and like give us like the differences.
Okay, so growing up in Zimbabwe, like I think there is a lot of privilege I must recognize that I grew up with in a lot of ways, and I'm grateful for, in the sense that like I always went to private school, and so the way that the diverse range of people interact in that environment made it a very safe and unproblematic environment for me as a child. And so it was very, like I said, it was very interesting because it took me such a long time to realize that I had albinism. I knew that I had vision problems and that I did look different from my family members, but it wasn't something that I had to acutely be aware of. I think up until there was a lot of news in, I think about 2010, if I'm not mistaken, of people with albinism being persecuted in Tanzania. And that was something that was really, really intense for me, just because although I was in Zimbabwe, a completely different part of Africa, my parents were really concerned. And it was something that I was hyper aware of because they made sure that they stayed aware of it and were very protective of me. And I had a little boy who, I don't know why he had an issue with me. I would like to know to this day. And he would say things like, oh, you should go to Tanzania. Like, oh, you should, should go take a trip there. Yeah.
That's disrespectful.
It's really awful. And it took me a long time to forgive him for that, just because I feel like not only was that something that's horrible and like nobody should ever have anything similar said to them, I just felt like he also made it something that was very public, and it was very public at a time where I didn't fully acknowledge myself as a Black woman with albinism. It was still something that I could live without having to acknowledge, and at the time that I did. And so for him to bring it up like that, it was twofold of a difficult thing for me to deal with. And no, like, I mean, in general, like my parents were really, they really worked hard to create an environment where I was always comfortable and always really accepted. So even with my family members and like at my schools, my mom would like show up on the first day of school and be like, hey, you better be nice to my kid or else we're going to have a problem.
Wow. Wow.
My mom does not, no. My mom is one of those women. If she says it's going to be done a certain way, it's going to be done a certain way and she'll make sure of it. And so I definitely benefited from that a lot in childhood. And then moving to Italy, I was about 18 when I moved. And it was a completely different environment. My parents were terrified because I'd been coddled my entire life. You know, I'd always been in a very safe environment, a very monitored environment. And I was going on a flight to start my undergraduate degree all by myself. And so like my parents took all the precautions. They called the airline. They like set up lounges and like people to walk me to my gates, like very melodramatic.
Oh my God, that's extreme to me.
No. And the thing is, my sister, she studies in Germany. They flew my sister to Italy so that I would have somebody to meet once I got here.
Oh, wow. So you couldn't be alone coming out the airport.
Like
yeah,
maybe...
so I literally, for my first week to 2 weeks of being in Italy, I was with my sister and my cousin.
Wow. Is it because you're the youngest or do you think it's because you're albinism?
I'm a middle child. I think it's partly because I have albinism, but also partly because my parents are very protective in general. And I think it's also being female because I do still feel like there is a lot of, I would say misogyny, but also protectiveness over women in African culture still. So it's like, I have to keep my daughter safe. And so I think that it was a mixture of a couple of things, but I'm a middle child. So I don't think it's the last child syndrome. I think it's a mixture of me having albinism and me being a woman coupled together made them really worried for me.
Now, what about your vision growing up? How hard was it to adapt to having low vision, like in the classroom, outside with friends?
So like I was saying earlier, my parents, I think the thing is I only started really having to deal with my own issues when I became an undergrad student. But my parents always put it very much. And the thing is, because I went to private school, my parents could do this. They would go to my teachers and be like, this is my child. These are the things that they cannot do. Make it so that their classroom experience is as normal as possible. So I would sit in the front and I got enlarged exam papers and stuff like that. But I know that a lot of my teachers actively made an effort so that I didn't have to feel othered in any capacity during my educational career. Just because my, in African culture still it's something super big with education. And like I said, my mom doesn't she doesn't let people step all over her, and she will definitely put her foot down when necessary. So.
And how often was it that you saw someone else with albinism in Zimbabwe?
Not often, but I think in general, the circle of people that I saw was very small. Just because if you go to certain kinds of schools, you hang out in certain kinds of places with certain kinds of people. And so in general, I don't know that many people. And it's because I was always in a certain level of a circle and it only went so far. But I think as I more actively tried to pursue finding people with albinism and creating those relationships, I did see them more often, but it was definitely something I had to actively decide that I wanted to do.
So you didn't come across it much until you started to seek organizations and things that were built around albinism. And then, so is there like an albinism community out there specifically for people with albinism?
No, my mom's just crazy. And I say this in the best way possible, but she definitely tried. I think it was more of her before it was me. So it was more of her wanting me to be around people who looked like me, so I didn't feel like the only one. And so one of my distant cousins from my mom's side, she also has albinism. So my mom definitely made an effort to have me like meet her and see her life, but also to put me in positions where I interact with other people with albinism, both people who are younger and older. I think she is like, strangely enough, like this linchpin that is linking people together and kind of creating a pseudo community there.
And then when you crossed over to Italy, did you see more or less people with albinism?
Less. And it was, I had a wake-up call I was not ready for, I think.
Describe that. What do you mean by that?
I think the thing is, there is a twofold thing that I should describe in my experience in Italy. The first being that I think there is a lot of ignorance in people just in general. I don't think that, I wouldn't say all Italian people are ignorant, but from what I've experienced, there is a lot of racial tension in Italy. A lot because of the fact that there are a lot of immigrants that come from North Africa on boats and they're black and then they end up needing financial aid, whatever. There's a huge political thing. Mm-hmm. And so racism is something that is really problematic in Italy. However, it's been something that I haven't had to deal with actively. And it's a weird thing where like you feel a lot of guilt for passing because you are fully aware that if people understood who you were, that the way that they would treat you in certain instances would be different. But I think also something that I really wasn't expecting, and this one really, really hit, is I think this again to consider being like a woman of color with albinism is like a lot of fetishization. Like it's not okay.
So we kind of spoke about that like a while ago. I guess we'll bring that up now. So you're saying some guys would look at you as a fetish, like she's exotic. Oh, yeah. She's black, but she has the white skin and the blonde hair, and
I have heard so many horrendous things that people have said to me. And it's like, even in normal conversations or like in normal like romantic possible situation, like first date situations, people will say something like, oh, you're so exotic, you must get a lot of attention. Or just like, I remember this one guy specifically, I was talking to him and he was like to me, oh, like, how do you look like that? And I explained,
stupid way to
I have gained a lot of patience. I have gained a lot of patience because I have heard this, that, the other, and whatever. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna break this down for you really simply. And then he's like, yeah, but something must have really gone good in your combination.
What?
I am not a food. I am not a food.
So then, how do you respond to those men who you could clearly tell he's attracted to you out of the fetish of how different you look? How do
My block list is long.
Say that again?
My block list is very long.
Oh, wow.
It's long. No,
how do they usually approach you? How do they approach you?
Some of them, it's more normal. Like, you know, it's more normal, like cheesy shit that guys say. Like, you're pretty, whatever. And then progressively throughout the conversation, you start to like pick up red flags, you know? It's like commentary on like my body or like, oh, your hair or this. And it's just like it collectively builds up to you are really creepy as a person.
But see, my thing is this, right?
Strong black girl fetish here. And then it makes it worse. It amplifies it that I'm a black girl with albinism. So it amplifies the exoticism. And it just makes it even more difficult for me to be like, hey, I'm just a regular person. Please leave me alone.
But see, now, is it truly a bad thing to accept someone who wants you in the fetish realm of it because you have albinism? Because it's no different than anything else. Like, let's say, for example, a guy who likes BBWs, right? If he sees a big girl, he might go and talk to her simply because he's so attracted to her body type, but that's his fetish. Or let's say a guy who has a fetish for toes or something. And then toes. For real, like a guy who has a fetish for toes, and he goes to a bar or something and see a girl with her toes out and might like, oh my God, she has some sexy feet. I'm going to go talk to her. People got fetishes, and when they see someone who applies to that fetish, they're going to go talk to them. So is that wrong for a guy to be like, oh, albinism, that's a fetish. I like the white skin but the black features. Let me talk to that.
Okay. I'm about to get really heated. Because this is something that gets me so like.
Nah, speak your piece.
The thing is, right, I think there's a difference between a fetish and a preference, to start there.
Okay.
Because I think the thing about the fetish is it's so aggressively sexual. So it's not like, oh, you're speaking to me with the intention of getting to know me as a person. You're speaking to me and calculating in your head how quickly you think that you can get me in your bed, and that's disgusting. Secondarily speaking, a preference is fine. But for me, I think it's because also I'm the kind of person who race doesn't matter to me. Like race, like skin complexion, like I just don't think those things are important. And so for me, when somebody places such high level of importance on those things, it makes me uncomfortable. Like, I feel like when I see people with like Asian girl, like it just makes me uncomfortable because it's like, you should be looking at this person as beautiful. Yes, they are Asian. Yes, they are Indian. Yes, they have vitiligo. Yes, they're whatever. But you should look at them as beautiful, not like, oh, because they have this and that, this is why they're attractive and this is why I'm attracted to them. Like, no, that's just not okay.
Okay.
And it's also like one big thing that really gets me super heated is a lot of Europeans, it's like the whole black girl like fetishization, but it's like when it comes time to stand up for black rights, you're silent. No, that is not okay for me. Because at the end of the day, with dating a person of color, you are going to need to be there for the good times and the bad times. You're going to need to stand up for that person when it's problematic. Like, I dated this guy for a while, and I didn't speak Italian very well at the moment in town that the scenario that I'm about to explain happened. So I was completely oblivious. And we were at a clothing store, and we were buying this stuff, whatever, and the lady was speaking to him in Italian. And I was just minding my business. And then she asked him that if I'm from Africa, because she was asking a lot of questions. She was just being, anyway. She's like, if I'm from Africa, how am I so white? And he was like, we're leaving. And I said, And it's like, it's that kind of stuff where it's like, I need you to be able to not let people get away with certain things. And unfortunately, when it's a fetish, especially, people aren't willing to be there for the hard times because for them, it's for satisfaction. Like, it's not for the long term. It's not for the real. It's for satisfaction that is temporary, and that's disgusting to me.
So have you ever had a guy approach you with the assumption that you were easier to get in the bedroom because you were albino? I didn't expect that reaction. I didn't think it would happen that much.
I think, okay, I'm firstly going to tell you another story, but like, yeah. Basically, again, this is a story from before I started speaking Italian. I guess I started speaking Italian for my own safety at this point because I was at a cafe that my friend used to work at, minding my business, sipping my little smoothie, just existing, breathing. And there was this guy who was a regular client. He was a taxi driver. And this was also something that comes up to me as a red flag. Because the thing about being one of very few women with albinism in a certain geographic location is people start to know you. So if they see you more than once, they recognize you. And you might not notice them because, why would you? And then it just becomes scary. But anyway, go back to the story. And she is talking to him, and I can see her get visibly angry. And I obviously didn't understand, but I was just, sipping my smoothie. I see him look at me. I'm just sipping my smoothie. And then she's like, she basically kicks him out. Like, I didn't hear what words she was using, but I saw her pointing at the door, and I was like, this is weird. What happened? I'm like, I thought I was about to get some gossip or something. And she tells me that he told her to tell me that I should consider prostitution because people would pay a lot of money
for an albino prostitute. I mean,
no, that's wrong.
I don't think it's a good thing to do, but I do
We're
think
not playing devil's advocate.
If somebody was an albino stripper, they probably would get a lot of money. Because they would be you're so noticeable. They would remember your face and you know what I'm saying?
That's true, but like,
we're not
I'm minding my fucking business. Why would you even think that about me? Like,
but he didn't know you. But he didn't know you.
Breathing. Why would you think that even about somebody that you don't know? You're just sitting there breathing.
Yeah.
That's what incites you to have those, like, and that's the thing that really creeped me out is because also he's a taxi driver. So I'm thinking these are the people that you're trusting when you're like stepping out of the club or whatever to take you home. These are the people.
Yeah.
And it's like,
he's kind of
I can tell you a second story. I had gone out with one of my friends and she was rather intoxicated. And so I was talking to the taxi driver just to distract him because I didn't want him to kick us out because we were really far away from our house. And whatever, it's fine. I get out of the taxi and as I'm getting out of the taxi, he pinches my cheek and he goes, "Oh, bye, dear." And I'm like, you know what? It's fine. I got out of the taxi. It doesn't matter. I paid. This experience is over. I get back into my house and like a lot of taxis here in Italy, especially like if you're a woman and they drop you off in the evening, they'll wait until you get into the building before they leave, which is usually something that's really nice, but not in this specific instance. Because like I would say a good 6-ish months later, I'm out to a different night with a different friend. We are starting to find a taxi and then this man comes up to us like, "Oh, I can drive you guys to like this neighborhood." And we're like, "Oh, okay, fine." And like we thought that he had spoken to other taxi drivers we had asked because they were standing in the same area, but I'm not sure if that happened. And I will tell you the golden part of the story. And so I'm in the taxi with my friend. He's quiet, whatever. She gets dropped off first because she lives closer to where we were. And then we're in the taxi. He's like, "Oh, I picked you up from the club that I was at previously, like 6 months ago." And I was like, "What?" I was like, no, we're at this other place. And he goes, no, don't you remember? I'm sitting in the back seat and I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. And then he proceeds to point at my apartment building. And he goes, "You live there, right?"
Oh no.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm not big on the whole fetish thing.
So now, Jason, what do you think? Do you think that people sometimes see albinism as a fetish? Do you think it's the same for men and women or just the women? What you think, Jason?
I think it's more so for women than for men. I've never, well, no. Actually, I think it's the same because I've definitely had women approach me and they were just so fascinated with the fact that I have albinism.
Right.
And they were just curious about a lot of things. But, but you know, but me, I don't mind the attention. I guess it's different because I'm a guy and like, I would prefer to get attention from women. And, you know, we don't get into much creepy situations. There hasn't been anyone following me home or taxis waiting for me.
What about your woman though? Do you feel like your woman kind of sees you as a fetish, like the skin tone with the features and all of that, or no?
I don't think so. Maybe but that's what any relationship, what the features, what someone looks like is what originally attracts you to them. But eventually, once you get to know the person, the features don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I've had women like from my job come up to me and just be straight blunt with it and be like, "Yo, you know what? I think albinism is so sexy." You know what I mean?
Whoa.
It's like, all right, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And I'm talking about women my age, women older than me, some women significantly older than me that would say things like that, you know what I mean? And they would just be straight up and be like, "Yo, I think it's so sexy." And I've had other women tell me like, they feel like it's sexy because it's like you have the white skin, but the black features. You know what I'm saying? So you have the pale skin, but a black man's nose, black man's lips, black man's beard, hair texture. So that right there, it does look exotic. It does. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's always something to be upset about if someone gravitates.
No, absolutely not.
Because of those features. Because it's like anything else, like a guy who's 6'7" and a woman who's super attracted or has a fetish for super tall men.
But that's scary. It's like you shouldn't be aggressively attracted to somebody like that. Like there's levels, you know.
Right.
There's levels
and
to things that are okay.
But you know, it depends on your
it depends on your intention.
your intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's different from a guy who's like, hey, my preference is women with albinism. I like that. I think it's sexy. And now I want to talk to you, versus a guy who's like, oh, that's a sexual fetish. Can I smash this albino girl I saw the other day? So I can say that I smashed an albino. That would be totally wrong. Versus somebody who's like, yo, I just love those features. I think that's my preference. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I agree with you. I think the thing is, for me, I'm just like kind of exhausted in getting aggressively sexual attention. So I'm just mad. Like,
do you feel like
it's different between Zimbabwe and Italy, the attention that you get?
I think the aggressive, like the level of aggression sexually speaking is definitely a lot higher in Italy. I think that's also to pay in respect again with the fact that like I only stay in a certain circle in Zim, but also that our culture is more conservative. So people are like, it's kind of shameful to just go up to be somebody and be that aggressively sexual. But I don't know. I think it's just like the very, very exotic foreign thing. And in Zim, I'm only a certain level foreign. Like I'm only a certain level different looking because I'm still Zimbabwean. Like I can still speak Shona and like do all the other things that qualify me to be a Zimbabwean woman. It's just that here, it's like I'm completely so far out of anything that people recognize. And so it has served me good because I've done some modeling and it's been interesting for me and I've had really good conversations with people. But it's also just made me so over dating and anything romantically affiliated at all because it's just too much. Like I'm tired.
So let me ask you guys this. Have you guys ever felt this way towards someone else? Meaning, my question is, being that we have albinism, because you have albinism, have you ever thought, you know what, I want to smash someone else with albinism because I have albinism? Be honest now. Have you ever felt that way?
No, not for me.
I don't think smash would be the word. I think there was definitely a time where I felt like I would be more understood by somebody else who had albinism.
Okay, so you thought of it more so on a relationship aspect, like I probably could connect better with another man with albinism.
Yeah.
But you never thought, yo, it would be nice to have sex with another man with albinism because I have albinism, and that would, you never felt that.
Don't think that aggressively sexually. I think like, you know, everybody has sexual thoughts, but I feel like that's just a little beyond.
What about you,
Jason?
Jason? You saying you thought that way too, Jason?
No, I don't have a preference for people with albinism.
Not a preference, but have you ever said, yo, because I'm albino, I should definitely I would definitely want to smash a woman with albinism? You never felt that way?
No, never.
I'm gonna be honest, I have. I definitely, because I have albinism. Why wouldn't I think that? You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, it'd be nice to smash an albino joint. You know? Albinos, come on. Like, you know what I mean? So I definitely thought that.
But do you see yourself dating someone with albinism, or would you just do it just
dating? Sure, you know what I mean. If it were to happen organically, you know, I'm sure that I would have dated somebody with albinism in the past. But yeah, I don't see, you know, I don't see nothing wrong with it. But I definitely understand where you're coming from.
Ain't nothing wrong with the little bump and grind.
Then it's like, yo, it's kind of creepy, you know.
I'm just tired. I think it's also because like, you know, being African, I have a more curvaceous body, I'll say that. And so it's just like, I think the coupling of all of these things really just doesn't do me any favors. And so it's like, I'll get people commenting on like how my body is. I think there's one guy who called me white Nicki Minaj. And I just...
Wow.
Like, I just imagine you're going about your day and somebody just screams that. And you're just like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, if I were to tell you all of the stories that I have, you'd understand why I'm just so over it. I'm just so tired. And the worst thing is, it's not even just men. I have been harassed by women as well. So.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I had this, I was at a bar once and I had this woman, she was like definitely in her 40s. I think she was like late 30s to 40s. She just came out, she's like, you're so beautiful. Like, how am I supposed to be like, not notice that? And I was like, oh, thank you. Like, I thought she was just being nice. I was like, okay, whatever. And then like very soon after she says it, she just grabs my breast. And I'm like, oh, that's not normal. That is not normal behavior. And so, yeah, I'm just done, honestly.
Okay, so in closing, what advice would you give to women with albinism who are still constantly being sexually targeted because of how they look? What advice would you give to them and how to handle it?
I think it's just important to really love yourself, in the sense that I feel like when you do have self-love, one, you are able to be more patient in weeding out the people who have good intentions and those who do not.
That's super.
And I think also it's a lot easier for you to deal with people who don't know how to behave, because as much as it's like a lot of it is unacceptable and a lot of it is really scary or offensive, if you have self-love, it's going to upset you, but it's not going to destroy you. And that's really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, like you said, that self-love and having that self-confidence is so important, because then you won't just jump to the first guy who shows you attention sexually or otherwise. You know what I mean? So that's super important. Okay, so in closing, we want you to give the people your social media, where they can find you, where they can follow you, and we'll end it at that.
Okay, so my Instagram and my TikTok, yes, I'm a millennial on TikTok, is just Chiedza. And
well, spell that for the people, please.
Yeah, I thought I would. So just like normally in English, period, Chiedza. Your audience is mainly American, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Chiedza. And I'm sure you won't have too much trouble finding me.
Okay, and your Instagram?
Oh, my Instagram is also just period, Chiedza.
Okay, and we want to take this time to just thank you for doing the episode. And we had an amazing topic today, so I'm excited for this one. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.
Thank you.
All right, see y'all on the next episode.